Hello, everyone. Welcome to this month's session of OT Echo. We have Jennifer Waid back in this month. She was just here last month for handwriting assessment. This month, she'll be now presenting on handwriting intervention. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. We'll try to either in the middle of the presentation answer them, or when we have time at the end, we will do so as well. But without further ado, so you have plenty of time, Jennifer. You
Thank
are
you.
set to go.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. I hope everyone's doing well today. Um, if you were with me last month, this presentation will kind of take the same format as you will see today. Last month, we talked about handwriting assessment. And if you did not get to attend that, that is posted on the OT Echo website. So you can look back and refer to that as well. Today, we are talking about handwriting intervention. And I have to tell you, I feel like we are just barely going to scratch the surface. So my hope is that if you're an experienced therapist who does a lot of handwriting, maybe you pick up one or two new strategies that you want to go and try. If you're new, I hope you pick up some great tools to put on your tool belt and carry into the classroom or the clinic, wherever it is you work. So briefly, a little teeny bit about me. I'm just gonna, again, we need more time for the interventions than me. I've been practicing for 30 years in various pediatric settings. I'm currently a professor at Pfeiffer University in North Carolina, and I am also currently a school-based therapist. So I do a lot of work with handwriting. This is the format that we followed when we did the assessment, handwriting assessment. And so I wanted to just mimic this and carry this through and once I've done my assessment, how I carry out handwriting intervention or interventions with students that have handwriting deficits, because it's not all just handwriting interventions, right? So here we go. We're going to look through interventions for upper body and core strength, praxis and motor planning, fine motor skills of all different kinds, visual motor and visual perceptual skills, oculomotor skills, and sensory processing. Now, I will probably zoom through a lot of these slides, have a lot of information on them. A lot of this is what we just do on a daily basis as OTs when we have a child who has upper body or core weakness. It's just putting this in perspective of our students who have handwriting deficits may need a lot of work in these foundational skills as well as handwriting. But some of these first slides, like I said, have a lot of information and I may just skim through them because I feel like a lot of you, this is stuff that you know and do on a daily basis. So when it comes to upper body and core strength, these are a ton of the activities that I do with students, depending on their age. Some of my favorites are with older kids. I actually love holding a long arm plank. We sit there and talk about their day and how they've been doing, and it distracts them from the upper body strengthening. Jumping down a little bit, I love animal walks of all different kinds. One of my favorites is the inchworm walk. And that is, for those of you, you might call it a plank walkout. You essentially start in a standing hamstring stretch, hands and feet on the ground. You walk your hands forward until you're in a push-up position, and then you walk your feet up to your hands, and you kind of inchworm across the mat. Kids really enjoy that one. They enjoy burrowing under cushions. One of my favorite things to do with all of this is to turn it into an obstacle course. You know, I'll literally, with my kids who have handwriting deficits, I'll set up an obstacle course with 4 or 5 stations around the room and a different way to get to each station. And that breaks up the activities for them and just makes it a lot of fun. If they have a favorite cartoon or video game, we'll throw in that theme and have Mario and how he's getting around the room, that sort of a thing. All right. So when we're working on core and upper body strength, one of our primary focuses handwriting wise is positioning. Are our students able to sit nice and upright at a table and get those arms free from their body so that they can produce nice handwriting? So of course, what we're looking for, and I had this visual in the assessment presentation as well, what we're looking for here is we want our students hips at 90 degrees, knees at 90 degrees, ankles at 90 degrees, and we want that surface of the table about 2 inches above the bend of their elbow. That is ideal. Now, I know most of my classrooms don't have ideal furniture for every single student in that classroom. And some kids need more support than others. So looking at while you are working on core strength, because we know that's not an instant fix, um, looking at, do they need a back support to deal with a chair depth that is too large? Do they need a footrest under their feet? Now, footrests, I have tons of them in my clinic or in the clinic in the school. And I've made them out of basically a multitude of different kinds of trash. Old catalogs, old phone books, if you can find them. I wrap things, nice, heavy, dense objects in tape. If it's gonna, if the catalog would open up, I'll wrap it in like duct tape, put it under their feet. You can find all different heights of catalogs and phone books. Oh, the other one is the pizza box with the holes cut in the front. So if you have a pizza box, you cut holes in the front where the chair legs can go in, which keeps the pizza box in place. And then the pizza box sticks out in front of them, much like the brown footrest under the little girl in the picture, so that they can put their feet on it. Now, some pizza boxes are more sturdy than others. Some last longer. But again, it's something that may have otherwise gone in the trash and now can be reused as a footrest or an adaptive positioning device. If the furniture just isn't going to work for your student, get them on the floor. Give them a lap desk or a clipboard, a slant board. They can sit, they can lay on their belly. And then also there is the option of standing, preferably standing at a table so that they can do their work in that position. All right, so we're going to move on to praxis or motor planning. This is one of my favorite areas. I love spending time doing rhythm and sequencing activities, and I do quite a multitude of them. These are just a few. So a 3 or 4 part motor pattern is where I'll ask a student to watch me, and I might jump, clap my hands, touch my head, jump, clap my hands, touch my head, and I'll repeat the sequence in rhythm a couple different times and then say, okay, now it's your turn, and see if they can do it. There's also, if you've ever heard of brain gym, there's cross crawl patterns, which is where you're in standing, you take your right elbow and touch it to you take your right elbow and touch it to your left knee, or your left elbow and touch it to your right knee, and you keep on going. In fact, the next slide shows a pattern of a little boy doing the cross crawl march. Hand jives are fun. Drumming is really fun. Any hand rhythm. When kids get really good at hand rhythms, I'll add in a verbal component where maybe we're doing math problems in rhythm or saying the alphabet in rhythm. And that way they're having to think and move at the same time, which is exactly what writing is, right? We need to be able to think of what we want to write while motorically writing it. And so being able to think and move is a very important combination and one that is really fun to practice with these different hand jives and cross crawl patterns. Oh, Simon Says Two Ways. Simon Says, I don't know if that's an international game or not. It's definitely an American game where it's a direction following game. So you're either supposed to do an action that the leader calls out or not do an action that the leader calls out based on whether Simon says to do it or not. Now, I don't play it that way with my students. With my students, I'm trying to get either praxis on verbal command or postural praxis. So when I'm trying to get praxis on verbal command, I'll say, Simon says, put one hand on your head and one hand on your knee. If they're older, I might get even more advanced and tell them left or right hand. Or, and I might give them more directions. Put your feet apart, put your hands together, and touch your nose with your thumbs. Just crazy things. And you're seeing, can they follow? Can they make their body do what you are asking them to do in an accurate way? Postural praxis, Simon Says, is where you go, Simon says, do this, and you jump into a different body posture. So it might be arms and legs out like you're doing a jumping jack, or it might be arms crossed and touching your hands, touching your shoulders and squatting down. And then you watch to see, can the students mirror what your body looks like? So those are just fun ways to practice motor planning and praxis. All right. Fine motor skill, for handedness. So now we're going to go through all the different fine motor skills. Handedness, a lot of what I have found with kids who haven't chosen a hand is midline crossing, doing lots and lots of activities. And that's why I show the cross crawl march here. It's also a praxis activity, but just anything where you're getting kids to cross that midline, to cross that corpus callosum in their brain and really start to figure out which one of these hands is the most skilled, which one of these hands is the strongest, has the best endurance, and am I going to be, can sustain through an activity. All right, for wrist strength and stability, you see the hands right there, painting on a vertical surface. Vertical surfaces are your best friend when it comes to building wrist strength. Anything you can get up on a wall. So taping paper up on a wall, using water to paint on a wall where that creates if it does create a nice difference of color when the water goes on the wall. Putting a car mat on the wall. I've had early childhood educators take like painter's tape or something that wouldn't ruin the wall and make a car road on the wall for their students to go up with blocks. It could just be a wooden rectangular block or an actual little toy car and drive on that road. Anything where you're getting that hand up and pulling on those wrist extensors is going to strengthen that position. And of course, that's the position we need when we're holding that pencil. Magnets on the wall, anything on an easel. Oh, Michelangelo coloring. This is one of my favorites, and some of you out there might already be familiar, but what you do with this one is you actually tape paper on the underside of a table and have the kids lie on their backs under the table to color up above their head. They think this one is so scandalous because they're being allowed to get under a table, and that's never allowed. So this one's a lot of fun. Prone on elbows coloring. Oh, crumpling long pieces of crepe paper. I'm actually specifically talking about like those party streamers that you stream across the ceiling when you have a party. You can have them hold the end of that and crumple it up within one hand. And if you do that motion alone, you can actually feel those wrist extensors really working. You can also use strips of newspaper, anything you have around that would Oh, you could even use cloth. To be honest with you, you could use a long ribbon or a piece of cloth, something that would be able to be gathered up into that one hand by moving those fingers and gathering that cloth into one hand. You can do that in standing position or in prone. And then using a slant board when students are working at a table to get that wrist and extension. I don't typically buy expensive slant boards. I use a 3-ring notebook and I turn it horizontally so that the fat end is away from the student. And that way also, instead of having a clip that holds their worksheet, they have to hold their worksheet with their non-dominant hand. So I like 3-ring notebooks better than therapeutic slant boards. All right, moving on to grasp patterns. Now, this is where we really specialize as OTs, so I really don't want to spend much time here. This is just really when we see students who are behind developmentally in their grasp pattern, and we're just moving from a raking grasp to an inferior pincer grasp. You're going to do all the same things that you would typically do. You're going to be using blocks and beads and small objects, puzzles, coins, all those different strategies that we use on a regular basis to progress grasp development and grasp patterns. All right, thumb opposition and flexion. This is one that I didn't really address early in my career. I didn't really notice it as much now, and I don't know if it has been a developmental shift in American children because of all the video gaming. I don't know what it is, but I see a lot more kids with instability in their thumb IP joint and a lot of hyperextension. And when they write with that thumb in that hyperextended position, they get a lot of pain and their hand fatigues so quickly. So this is an area where I've really started focusing more, especially with those kids that have that hyperextension. So we do a lot. I've even had kids whose and joint mobility is so extreme in that joint that I've had to splint them, which is why I went ahead and put that picture there. Sometimes I use KT tape. And there's instructions online on how you can tape that thumb IP joint. And again, sometimes I just use a standard spica splint like you see here. But these are some of the fun things. We got these little thumb puppets where you get your fingers on there and it takes thumb flexion in opposition to make that puppet go up and down. These pickle pickers, I just bought a set off of Amazon. They're very inexpensive, but they are also, they kind of fall apart easily. So I don't know if that's the best choice, but anything where you can get that thumb plunging into flexion and opposition will really help counteract that hyperextension in the pencil grasp. All right. I showed these during the assessment presentation last month. These are, according to research in 2012, what are considered the four functional grasp patterns. So of course we have our gold standard, the dynamic tripod, but it was also determined that the quadrupod, which brings that ring finger into the grasp pattern, is also considered functional. You have your lateral tripod, which means that the thumb is, instead of being opposed, is more lateral, and then the lateral quadrupod. And then, of course, these are some of my friends with non-functional grasp patterns. And these are the ones we're going to target. What are some things that we can do with these kids to help them to have a more functional grasp? What I call a non-functional grasp. Now, this is one interesting point I wanted to make really quick. And check on my time here. One interesting point I wanted to make really quick is this little guy that you see with the fisted grasp. I don't know if you're going to be able to see my pointer or not. With the fisted grasp with his thumb tucked in. I put this in the non-functional grasp patterns because typically this would be a non-functional grasp. However, this little guy has no pain, no fatigue when he writes, and his handwriting is immaculate and fast. So, is it functional or non-functional? I actually call this a functional grasp for him. So there is a situation where you're going to need to look case by case. Is there pain? Is there fatigue? I've had kids with a dynamic tripod grasp who have pain. It is a non-functional grasp. We have to figure out why is pain occurring and how can we prevent it, right? So using those clinical reasoning skills to figure out, is it functional or non-functional, though these are typically non-functional patterns. So when we're looking at that pencil grasp, what can we do to adapt the pencil or use an adaptive pencil itself to help attain a functional grasp? So short, fat, triangular pencils, Ticonderoga makes a really nice version. I don't like long, fat pencils because they're too heavy and they can make a student who has a nice grasp, but some weakness, resort to a fisted grasp. So if you're going to use a fat pencil, that's what they're called in the US, make sure it's short. Golf pencils are great. They have the narrow diameter and they are small and light, which really is something that is conducive to that dynamic tripod grasp. Pencil grippers, my two favorite. Over the 30 years, I have used tons of them. My two favorite are the Grotto Grip for ages 4 to 8, which is here about second grade, and then the Stetro Grip for my third grade and up, my 9-year-olds and up. Those two, they're available on Amazon. The Stetro is the second picture from the left. I'm sorry, that's wrong. The Grotto Grip is the second picture from the left. I did not find a stock image of a Stetro grip, but it's a much smaller molded grip that your fingers fit into. You can also use the clothespin trick, which is that picture on the far left. I believe, wait, am I mirrored? I just realized. I think it's a picture on the far left. Yeah. Putting an object in fingers 4 and 5 can really help keep those fingers tucked. And then the tie back. So these things that you see in the third picture over actually have the object for fingers 4 and 5 and the tie back that holds that pencil back in the web space of the hand. Weighted pencils, I tend to make my own weighted pencils using the, nuts and bolts. I use the bolts. I don't know if I can hold this up or not. No, the camera's not going to let me hold that close. Oh, yep, sort of. I know I'm tiny for you guys, but you see I have bolts on the pencil. And if I were to hold this pencil, they would land just above my grasp so that it's giving me just a little extra weight. I've had some OTs who slide those bolts inside the grasp, which seems like it would be obstructive, but it's actually not. And that gives a little bit more help and a little more, if someone writes really lightly, it gives them a little more downward pressure. So I use bolts. Or not bolts, the nuts that go on the bolts. I'll often use electrical tape and just tape them down so they're not a distraction. Though for some of my kids who like a fidget, If they fit on that pencil just right, I'll use like a rubber band to keep them in place on either side, and they're a nice spinner. And that's really not very distracting. So it really depends on your student what's going to be the best for them. There's some alternative pencils that I use a lot. Twist and Write is a U-shaped pencil. Again, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to, oh, there it is. The U-shaped pencil. That is really great. Kids, you put your finger through here and you hold it like that. Those are available. I sound like I get money from Amazon, but I don't. I love mechanical pencils, specifically for students who push too hard, which is really mean sounding, but they get the sense they start to get that feedback that they're pushing too hard and learn how to grade that pressure, which is really nice. And then that last picture on the right is a thumb block, a hyperextension blocking grip, which you can see really, you could probably use a blob of air dry clay on the pencil or pen, and it's just something for the thumb to wrap around. The fingers are actually holding the pen. They're not in the grip or on the grip. So that thumb just wraps around it and it blocks that extreme hyperextension of the thumb.
Jennifer, we just have a few questions. One
Okay.
was from Yasmin. If Yasmin, you want to go back to what picture she was saying? She said she missed with the right and the left. Can you put a pointer and mention the grip?
Okay. Well, I don't know how to do a
Yeah.
pointer. Is this the one here? I'm not sure if this is the one, the right and the left. I can't remember. Here I was talking about the picture on the well, and I was talking about the pic. This was the non-functional grasp, the top left picture, the little boy with the little, well, you can't tell he's a boy, but the orange sleeve. That's a grasp that would typically be non-functional, but for him, it is actually functional. And then here, I was talking about using a clothespin with this top left picture. You can see the clothespin is clipped to the pencil, and the fingers 4 and 5 would actually be holding onto it, while fingers thumb, index, and middle are moving the pencil. Yasmin, if I didn't get the right ones that you had missed, please re-ask the question and I'll try better. Okay.
There's a few more, but we'll wait until the end.
Um,
Oh,
uh, I wanted to ask about grow to grip and stetro grip. So which one is grow to and which one is stetro?
so I don't have a picture of the Stetro. So the Grotto grip is the second one here. That is the red and the green in the picture at the top. And you'll see, I like that it's a little bit big. I like it with kindergarten through second grade or about 5 to 8 years old. Actually, I use it in preschool too. If 4-year-olds are writing already with pencils, I'll put it on their pencil as well. But that second picture from the left is the Grotto grip. But I couldn't find a free picture of the Stetro. So if you Google it, it will pop up for you. It's a smaller, less obtrusive molded grip that's really nice for older students. Younger students don't get it. They just do whatever they normally do right over the top of a Stetro grip. Okay, thank you for the question.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, you're welcome. So, okay, so on for hand and finger strength. Again, I feel like this is an area you guys probably excel in. So you know about therapy putty. I love pop beads, which are the beads that have a little ball on one side and a little hole on the other. I have mini ones and you pop them together and it takes force, and those are really fun. They can sometimes they're just straight and you make bracelets and necklaces. My boys tend to want to make snakes and caterpillars. There's also kits where you can make animals and robots. They're harder to find, but you can sometimes find those. They're a lot of fun. So any toy that you have that's in your clinic, in your school, that takes resistance to push together, wind up toys that take resistance to twist. Plastic tweezers are some of my favorite things. I don't love tongs. All the adaptive tongs that are sold for kids tend to be too big, or they're too hard to use, or they result in like a fisted grasp. These plastic tweezers, which are really inexpensive and they tend to be meant for like electrical use, you have to be careful not to get the ones that are too pointy, but they are really nice for a lot of different games, for picking up small object, anything you can think of that you would use tongs for. These plastic tweezers are really nice to get that tripod grasp. Stacking small cubes with cap erasers. This is a hard one to explain, but I have kids hold cap erasers like this one. This would go on the top of a pencil. And is that showing? Yep. And they pinch the narrow part so that the circle is sticking out. They get one in each hand, and they use that to pick up a block and move it on top of another block. So they're using that nice pincer grasp, as you can see, and building those muscles during that was my 5-minute warning, guys. Oh, I'm barely through. Um, so building those muscles while they're doing another fun activity. I use clothespins for all kinds of things, and I have teachers who use clothespins for all kinds of things because they're nice for that strengthening. All right, in-hand manipulation. Mr. Money, I showed this video in the assessment presentation. Anything where you're moving objects around within one hand. I have a light bright. That's what the little boy is playing with on this slide. I'll have them hold 4 or 5 of those pegs in one hand and move one up to the fingertips while still holding the others in their hand and poking it in and pulling one up and poking it in. On my light bright, I can make my own designs by putting a blank piece of paper on top of it, and then I use a marker and I go over the holes, and when it goes over the holes, it makes an impression. So it goes boom, 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 boom with the marker. And you can put a letter on the piece of paper, or you can put their name on the piece of paper so that they are doing a design that you would like for them to work on while also working on in-hand manipulation and pinch strength. So that's a really fun one. Here is the video. You know what I'm going to do? Because I'm going to assume many of you may have come to my assessment presentation, I'm going to skip this for now, but we can definitely go back to it. This is Mr. Money, if you weren't there. And you can see that this little boy is feeding Mr. Money some coins. This is one of my kids' favorite in-hand manipulation activities. I also incorporate this into obstacle courses by putting the coins on the balance beam or along a scooter track where they're picking them up and hiding them in their hand, and then they get to the end and they feed Mr. Money. Fun things to do. Oh, so it's going to start without. All right, we're still going to go forward. All right, visual perceptual skills. These are all the different things that I do with students to reinforce handwriting, visual motor, and visual perceptual. I have 3 slides of these, you guys. I'm just going to highlight my favorites. I love anything messy, but if the child doesn't love things messy, I give them a tool so that they can still interact with the shaving cream, but they don't have to touch it. And then we're working on sensory issues as well, more than likely. I love wet, dry, try. This is from Learning Without Tears curriculum. You use a small chalkboard. You use chalk to write a nice letter, a nicely formed letter that you write. Then the child takes a little piece of wet sponge. They go right over what you have drawn so that they make the same letter. Then they take a tiny little piece of paper towel. They, again, do the pattern. They dry off that pattern, and then they take their own piece of chalk and one more time do that letter in the correct form right on top. So they've just done that letter 3 times, 3 different ways, and they think it's so fun to erase it, to dry it off, and then write it back on there again. Rainbow writing is similar, where you write the letter and they go on top of it with multiple colors of marker, whether that's on paper or on a whiteboard. I love waving streamers in the air in the right shapes. That way they can get the big muscles involved with learning letter and number formation. Then there's target practice for my kids who avoid handwriting altogether and are working on alignment. I have a saying that any child who can throw an object and hit a target can write a line and make a mark and land on the writing line. So that eye-hand coordination, you can throw objects into buckets, through rings, set a target on the wall, anything like that. I love bubbles. Bubbles are one of my favorite things. So I have some special bubbles that have glycerin in them and they last a little bit longer, but you can give kids a little popsicle stick to hold in a nice pincer grasp. And what you're going for is that they pop one bubble at a time rather than going crazy and just waving their hands around. For race car cutting, I found a few years back that some of the kids I had who were having a hard time with scissor skills, which is a visual motor skill, were just all over. They weren't paying attention to the line. So instead of one line, I drew two lines really close together with a white blank space between them. And I found that those kids would look at that tiny space in between, the negative space, and try to cut on that. And that really improved their scissor skill ability, their attention to what they were doing. I hope I explained that okay. I know that was super fast. We can go over that again when we get to the end. Visual motor and visual more. So parquetry blocks are really great. Pixel drawing is a new thing that my kids absolutely love. There's tons of examples online. If you're this picture on the slide is pixel drawing, and you use graph paper. So they count over how many, usually all the squares show, and that's how they figure out how to put it on the graph paper. All right, oculomotor skills. This is where we have to stay in our scope, of course, but within our scope, we can definitely work on ball skills, rolling, throwing, catching, scanning for letters in a text, scanning for numbers when doing a color by number art project, doing mazes with just your eyes. The bubble zapper activity I was talking about is definitely an oculomotor skill. All right, handwriting legibility factors. So we are looking in our handwriting for spacing within and between words, letter size consistency, letter formation, and alignment on the writing line. Here we have some different kinds of paper. So, before I talk about the paper, handwriting curriculum, if your school provides one, which mine does not. So I guide my teachers to find we have a free curriculum that we've been using this year that's called Printing Like a Pro. And it is a single stroke letter construction curriculum. This is for manuscript writing or print. The letters are grouped by stroke. So it's more of a developmental grouping. And you want to look for a curriculum that's based on motor learning theory and cognitive learning theory. The research shows us that those are the most effective. And then it's repetitious practice. I mean, really, research shows us that repetition and practice is what gives us that automatic handwriting. Now, when we need help with alignment and spacing and those things, sometimes we can offer an adaptive paper. So here I'm showing you highlighting the lowercase section of the paper. You can do this yourself. You don't have to buy expensive paper, right? Just use a highlighter. You can also do a bolded writing line. I am not a big fan of the raised writing line. I don't have a lot of success with it. If you do, excellent. Keep using it. I've never had a lot of success with the raised writing line. And then down here, I have an example of ready space. So you may have to zoom in to see it, but this looks like notebook paper, but it has these little vertical lines that give a guidance for spacing and for letter size. I find that students really adapt their letter size. Like you see the top example and then you see the bottom example, the difference in the quality of those handwritings just from one kid. All right, when it comes to sensory processing in handwriting, there's so many different things that you may need to address. You may need to vary the writing instrument. It may need to sound different. It may need to drag different. You may need to change the writing surface as the hand drags across the table, it may be uncomfortable. You want to practice grading pressure. That's what this is over here, where you go from ghost writing to dinosaur writing or, whatever interests the child, but something that's very feather writing to rock writing, I don't know. Sometimes putting foam under the writing paper, like a craft foam under the writing paper can be helpful, but that can also be super frustrating. The mechanical pencil I talked about earlier. And then it could be not necessarily a sensory issue with writing itself, but more with the environment. So looking at using noise reduction headphones, a vestibular cushion to give them that extra little bit of movement. If they're a wiggler, Alternative seating, letting them stand while they write if that is better for them. The stretchy therapy band that's across the chair legs or the table legs that they can push on with their foot. And then sometimes a privacy shield especially during written exams where they're having to write for a longer period of time. That can really help block out any visual distractions that may be impairing their ability to finish a test or something like that.
Jennifer,
Okay,
I'm just going to give you, oh, you
I
got
think I
perfect
made it.
timing.
I
Great
can't
job.
believe it. Woo! I talked so fast, guys. I'm so sorry. I hope, and you'll have the slides, so I know you can go back through, and I hope we'll have a chance to answer any questions. But that was my scratch the surface on handwriting intervention.
Perfect. Take it away with the case study.
Okay, so we are going to continue with Grayson. For those of you who were with me last month, I actually had some requests to continue with Grayson. You were curious about how we went forward with him. So if you were here last month, you recognize his grasp pattern. So Grayson is a 7.5-year-old student. He was referred to OT screening due to his teacher's concerns about his handwriting legibility. Grayson's teacher describes him as a bright student who is on grade level for reading and math. He reportedly struggles with body awareness and often gets in other students' space. Grayson is unable to zip his own coat when getting ready to go out for recess or it's dismissal, carpool, getting picked up. He also has difficulty opening his lunch containers and requires help removing lids from markers, glue during classroom activities. But wait, there's more. So here is an example of Grayson's handwriting. So during my classroom observation, Grayson was observed during literacy. He was engaged in a writing task which required him to write personal goals for this school year. Look at his cute little goal. While writing, Grayson used his right elbow. You saw that he was left-handed, right? But he used his right elbow to stabilize the paper and he leaned on his right hand while writing. So automatically we're thinking some things, right? The paper slipped a few times, but he did not vary his method. Grayson kicked his feet throughout the assessment, kicking the floor, constant movement. When he got up to turn in his paper, Grayson nearly knocked over his chair, but caught it. While navigating across the classroom, Grayson bumped into a peer's desk and kicked another peer's water bottle due to lack of visual attention in the direction he was moving and also his body awareness. Now, this is a much larger bit. I don't know if I should read through this or let them read through this in their small groups. Do you have a suggestion here? This is his OT evaluation or a
The
summary.
So the facilitators have access to the case study. It was emailed prior to them. You
Perfect.
are more than welcome to give just major highlights from each, or they will also have the opportunity to read through it as well.
Okay. Well, I'll try to do a quick synopsis here. So he's a super cooperative kid. He's very talkative. We almost sometimes have to ask him to stop talking, which is a difficult thing to do, right? But he has a lot to say. He's super sweet. He's very eager and he's very motivated. He definitely has upper body and core strength deficits. Let's see. He has motor planning and praxis deficits. He going down to the fine motor summary. He has pinch strength deficits. I'm hitting the deficits highlights because he's got so many good things too. But let's see. His in-him manipulation he had a hard time with. I describe his grasp, which you already got to see. He has a difficult time with pencil control in pathways. Let's see, I give you his VMI score there, which was a 117, which you would think, whoa, wait a minute, but that's because he's a very intelligent kid. But when you look at his motor control subtest, that was a 72. Okay, and his vision, let's see. No, yeah, the visual perception. I didn't give you his VMI. Oh, his VMI was 90. Sorry. Perception was 117. Perceptual score was 117, which is above average, right? But then control is below average. And you can imagine the frustration that this causes. He can see that it's wrong, but he can't get it to be right. So there's a lot of erasures that happen. Sensory wise, you probably already understand. He has low proprioceptive processing. He doesn't register proprioceptive very well, and he's a bit of a vestibular seeker. Okay. I'm going to let Kelsey take it away with getting you guys into groups. And I look forward, I'm really excited to hear. I hope you guys come up with some really cool goals and interventions for this little guy.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for the presentation. I am going to send you all in your breakout rooms now. Please remember to turn on your cameras. If you do not feel comfortable speaking out loud, please use the chat feature. If you do not get through all questions, no worries, just try your best. I know there's one where you can make multiple goals. If a group just gets one goal down and then an intervention, that's totally fine. Just try your best. Okay, everybody, thank you so much. Hello, everybody. We are just waiting for a good chunk of you to come back from the breakout rooms, and then we will momentarily start going over the case study questions. Okay, all the breakout rooms have been closed. We are now going to pass it to Antonis, who is going to go over the case study questions. Again, if you did not get to the questions, please just let us know. No problem at all.
So hello everybody, let's go on with the case study questions. Question number 1. Identify at least 3 client factors or deficits in performance skills that are interfering with Grayson's handwriting legibility. Tuluwalasi, would you like to answer this question?
So in my group, unfortunately, a lot of people didn't respond, just one person. So we had mentioned about core strengths, upper body strengths, the grip strengths, the hand or reduced hand strength and possibly endurance. Also, we also mentioned about the area of someone mentioned about process in not understanding the instructions they are being given, why it takes a longer time to process the steps involved, and also the technical control and of course motor planning deficits. So that's about the first one. And then we talked about the goal, long-term goal, getting an adult to assist as we withdraw support given to him, especially in the area of using the board in writing. So it's like getting an adult to assist and gradually withdrawing the assistance required as he progresses. Then we couldn't take all of this, so we had to stop at the third question, which I mean the activities, the intervention activities. Can you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Okay, please. Okay, so
Yes.
so like for the long-term goals, we talked about the slouching, the fatigue and reduced endurance. We talked about getting the paper stabilizers, and then getting him to maintain upright position for a while, and gradually reducing the amount of supervision that is required activities. And then we also mentioned a few activities that can be used for the function, like Play-Doh, modeling clay, lacing and beading, and then squeezing water spray, and like those all punching activities. And that's what was briefly discussed. Just two of us, though. Yeah.
Good.
Thank you. How about you, Timothy? Do you have to add something for the first question?
Well, on the first question, our group discussed about the poor hand manipulation. since Grayson cannot hold his pencils properly. Then we talked about the poor body awareness, whereby you could see him moving in different style. Then the poor core strength. So the core strength was not very stable for Grayson, and it needs to be worked on. Then the motor planning, or he has praxia. So it was also one of the effects. Then on our question number 2, the long-term goals, we set our goals that Grayson, we need to work on his muscle strength so that he can be able to hold different writing materials. Then we talked about working on Grayson's body awareness so that he can be able to know how to maneuver his environment and maybe manipulate different objects. Then we talked about improving on the core strength of Grayson through different activities, maybe wheelbarrow walking, and that one came as an intervention in question number 3. Wheelbarrow walking, then throwing balls maybe in a container, or throwing to him when he captures it. Yeah, so we didn't get enough time to visit question 4, but that's where we stopped.
Thank you very much. How about you, Boudica? As we've already gone through the rest of the questions, could you give us an answer for number 3 or 4?
Yeah, actually, I apologize for the group because of the technical problem. I got short time for the discussion. We discussed number 1, 2, and 3. So we just observe low registration, hyperextend index, and low muscle tone as a problem. So for the long-term goal, encourage the muscle strength and the sensory stimulation, and also the correct hyperextend index finger. So we prepare activity, wheelbarrow walking, and using painting, finger painting, and sandpaper drawing as an activity to encourage the Grayson handwriting. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me see. Who else was a facilitator here? How about Ria? Or evidence?
Okay, yes. We talked about the client factors of deficit, which was sensory processing and movement, and also decreased strength and cross stability and crossing midline. Then for number 2, the long-term goals, improving handwriting, seeing how Grayson does with previous, and also functional grabs, unlimited access to accommodation, which is also active sitting. And also for number 3, which intervention for handwriting, improving handwriting, we have improving the strength using therapeutics, using beads, mazes, word sessions, and also pencil grips. And for core strength, helping to improve core strength, we have breathing exercise, planks, wheelbarrow walks, and also using a slant board to help with core strength. And for the last one, number 4, using adaptive tools from various places. We have people suggested pencil grip, then I think the red safe paper was also recommended. Then we have Carrie's game would be recommended. Thank you.
Thank you for your answers. How about the rest of the teams? Mary, Riaz, Munzer, or Potain?
It's okay if you guys did not get to all the questions, no worries. We'll just ask Jennifer, is there anything you would like to add?
There's a couple more quick slides, and you'll have them in your slide deck. But on this next one, I did put a couple resources. I hope the links work. If they don't, I'm not sure if you can reach out to Kelsey and let her know. I'd be happy to repost them. But I have actual list of my animal walks that I love to use. I have a document on how to make a Mr. Money if you are interested using a tennis ball, or if you have some similar. I don't think a racquetball would work, but something like that. And then I have a video on single stroke letter construction and kind of what you're looking for in those curriculums, but it's not a curriculum itself. It's just a YouTube video. And that was it. So yeah, there were a couple questions. I don't know that I have time to answer those as part of the formal thing, or if you want me to go ahead and if you want me to answer them after. But there was a great question about working on scissor skills with someone who only has one functional hand to use, and then talking a little bit about grading pressure and how long it takes to make an impact on a child's ability to grade their pressure. So I'm either happy to answer those right now, or if you need to let people go.
We will say if anybody needs to run, feel free to run. We have sent the post-assessment link in the chat. We have also sent the Facebook link and the link to the OT Echo website. At the OT Echo website and on Facebook, you will be able to see all the presentations that have been made, including Jennifer's last month's presentation with the handwriting assessment. Also, just a quick note, next month in April, we have had a change of schedule. We will be having Dr. Duddy from Boston University complete a presentation. I do not yet have the title, so I do not know what it is, but as soon as I do, it will be uploaded on the OT Echo site. And for anyone who is looking for the slides, the case study, Jennifer also provided a one-page handout that is all located right on the OT Echo platform. Once you sign in, if you go to materials, you will all find everything right there on content. And if anyone needs to go, feel free. We'll give Jennifer about 5 more minutes.
Okay. So, and thank you all for coming as you're leaving, but thank you all for coming. It was a lot of fun. Okay, so for cutting with one functional arm, this is going to, well, this is going to be really hard for me to answer without seeing the student. One of my first questions would be, do they have use of their feet, their toes? I've had other students who've been able to stabilize a paper between their toes and then cut with their hand. If not, then my first go-to would be like a stabilizing clipboard, potentially, where they could clip the paper that they need to cut into the clipboard, cut one side. I mean, it would be tedious cutting one side of it, or maybe even close pinning it to something suspended in front of them. But that might be difficult as well, unless it was heavier paper. I mean, I want to sit in there and brainstorm with you. I don't know if that person is still here, but if there's any more details that we can give, I would be happy to do more brainstorming if those ideas that just popped into my head didn't help. As far as grading pressure, it really depends on the student, how long it takes them to catch that concept. For some kids, I handed them a mechanical pencil. They broke the lead 3 times and they had it because they learned how to grade that pressure. For kids, but they had a fair bit of proprioceptive feedback. It wasn't excellent, but it was enough that they could accommodate that quickly. Other students I have that either write really, really too light. I actually have a harder time getting darker writing, but in those cases, I tend to actually change the pencil. I use art pencils, so they'll have a softer lead, and you can, get a gradient of art pencils that write at different what am I trying to say? Different darknesses. That's the wrong word, and so if they use like a I'm trying to think of one of a 2HC. I can't remember if that's the right direction, but if you use a different lead in the pencil, you'll get actually a darker writing. So the teacher can at least read the writing as you're working on strength or whatever it is that is impairing pencil pressure. Again, when it's too heavy, the same thing. It can take a month or more to really get a child to pull back and not rip that paper when they're erasing or when they're writing. It really just depends on the age and the amount of proprioceptive feedback they're getting. So I hope that those were the two that I saw in the chat that we had not answered. I don't know if there's any others. I haven't checked. Oh, now there's 20 something things in the chat. Kelsey, do you see other questions in the chat?
I think the only other one, unless I mentioned it, was Mary's about the clarification about the splints.
Oh, yes. Okay. So I did read that one. And my purpose, and so a lot of the kids that I work with, it's not really that I don't know how to hold my hand up. It's not that they hyperextend at the MP joint. It's that it's very neutral. And then of course they're hyperextending at the IP joint. So I find if I just stabilize the MP joint, that's what that splint is for, then they will use flexion in their IP joint. That's why I don't want it blocked, because I want to strengthen the flexion, but while stabilizing that MP and CMC joint. Does that make more sense? I was trying to fly through that. I think we're alone, Mary. So and thank you so much. You found the link to the Printing Like a Pro, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
And posted. Thank you so much.
Yeah, what I was confused because I have one student in particular that he hyperextends all fingers at the PIP, and it includes his thumb as well at the IP with the hyperextension. And so, like, for instance, I'm trying to get some isolated digital flexion for keyboarding.
Yes.
And he ends up going into total hyperextension. Yeah. And it interferes with his isolated individual finger because he has to like hold all the other fingers out of the way to be able to get one finger.
Yes.
And so when you were talking about splinting, I'm like, I don't want to go into like
right.
the tip where it's just bent like there, like this, where it's on the IP, because that's the opposite happens at the thumb, is it hyperextends like this on the tip. So even though I'm blocking proximally, he still has that hyperextension on the IP. So I didn't understand how a thumb spica helped with that hyperextension if it's truly at the IP level that the hyperextension is happening.
And it's because we were doing an activity where I'm going for opposition more so than I'm going for opposition. And so that's where if I can at least stabilize here, I get that flexion and then I can strengthen that thumb flexor.
Yeah. And like I said, my student in particular that I'm thinking of needs some kind of support to facilitate the flexion across all digits.
Right.
Versus just isolating the thumb.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's an interesting case.
I bet. It sounds like it. I wish I could sit in the room and brainstorm with you. It sounds challenging and fascinating and wonderful. So I hope
he'd make a good case study. Definitely.
He absolutely would. Now you've got my brain thinking, but I don't think I'm going to think of anything fast enough to get that. I mean, I do tons of activities without the keyboard, which are just like, piano exercises essentially, where you're, spider fingers on. I even have kids put their hand over a ball. I got my Mr. Money hand over a ball, and they on the table. So we're on a table and tapping and tapping and tapping, and can they maintain that flexion while
that
tapping?
may help.
And then we try it without the ball, and can we sustain that position and tap and tap? Of course, my wrist is all flexed and everything's wrong right now as I'm holding it up into the camera, but you get the...
You might give me an idea in the sense that if I could have some elevated curved surface that would allow him to reach out with each digit individually. But what he does is he just goes into this spastic kind of
thing.
Even though the rest of the body isn't in a spasm.
Right.
All right. Thank you.
I hope that helped. Maybe we sparked a little brainstorm there.
Definitely.
Thank you so much for everyone that has joined. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for your extra time today. If anyone has any questions or concerns, please do not hesitate to reach out over email. If anyone has any other questions they want to send to me, Jennifer, I can always let you know too if anyone else has some interesting questions that come up. Again, all the links have been posted in the chat, and we hope to see you next week or next month.
Yeah. All right.
Bye.
Bye.